After the nightmare that was Tuesday night, at least the Orioles decided to play a normal baseball game on Wednesday. Unfortunately, they lost them both to the Nationals, and I'll recap it coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, April 24th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' losses in the first two games of this series in D.C. against the Nationals. I'll tell you what went right, what went wrong, and a shout out to somebody in both of the games, including the disastrous 7-0 loss on Tuesday, which I was in attendance to see, and then the much better looking, but still a 4-3 L on Wednesday night. We'll talk about a terrible start from Dean Kremer and nothing from the O's offense on Tuesday. Then we'll talk about a good turnaround from Tomoyuki Sugano, the Orioles showing some offensive life, but not being able to get the big hit in Wednesday's close loss. And then finally, we'll get some pitcher updates. We're going to talk about Charlie Morton. We're talking about Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, Kyle Gibson, Brandon Young, and others coming up at the end of this show. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So we'll start today's episode with Tuesday's game because thank you for your patience. Was not able to get out a Wednesday episode that kind of recapped Tuesday's loss. I'll tell you why. I was at the game in DC. Surprisingly, my first game of the season was not even at Oriole Park. I was at Orioles Nats on Tuesday night in DC. I had to get all the way back to Baltimore and then get up for work the next morning. So by the time I walked in the door just before midnight on Tuesday night, an episode was not going to happen. Had the Orioles won, I think I would have made it happen for you. When you lose 7-0 and look lifeless like that, it seemed like a good time for a day off for the show. So hopefully you enjoyed the postcast with Luke from Tuesday night if you were able to check that out. But we are back here on Thursday recapping both of those games. So unfortunately, we are going to start with Tuesday, a 7-0 loss to the Nationals. And we begin with what went right on Tuesday. Well, really the only thing that went right was Cedric Mullins. And he is thriving against left-handed pitchers once again. Mullins was in the leadoff spot in Tuesday night's lineup against left-handed starter Mitchell Parker for the Nationals. And that was quite a surprise because it was the first time Mullins had hit leadoff against a true left-handed starter, not like a lefty who was the opener for some team like we saw with Brent Suter for the Reds on Sunday, but a true left-handed starter. Mullins in the leadoff spot for the first time since May 29th of 2023. It had been almost 2 years since we had seen that. He works a 4-pitch walk to start the game against Parker. He singles in the third against the left-hander Parker, which ended up being the Orioles' only hit of the day. And then he faced a different lefty, Colin Poche, who we've seen a lot with the Rays over the years, in the ninth, and he drew a walk there too, reaching 3 different times against left-handers. By the end of the game, Mullins was hitting .290 with a 1066 OPS on the season. That is a .212 WRC plus for Cedric Mullins. He has been more than twice as good as a league average hitter this season. And if you put it into just a month's perspective, obviously this month is not over. We're still here in late April. The best month of Mullins' career was June of 2021. In the middle of his off-star season, he had a .212 WRC plus. That is what he had after play on Tuesday. That is how good Mullins has been. He's been equal to the best month of his career. And when you take it just against left-handed pitching, this has been by far the best month of Mullins' career, if you count March/April as kind of 1 month as MLB does in its split stats. Now, it's only been 23 total plate appearances against lefties that was entering play on Wednesday for Cedric Mullins. But in those first 23 plate appearances, Mullins hitting .353, .522 on base, .765 slugging, a .269 WRC plus with 2 homers, 5 walks, and just 1 strikeout in the 23 plate appearances against lefties this year. He is actually hitting better against lefties than he is against righties this season. That is kind of absurd for a guy who had a 43 WRC plus against left-handed pitching, was unplayable against lefties in 2024. His next best month against a lefty in his career, March and April of 2021, he had a 169 WRC plus. He's at 269 in this month. I mean, after he was so bad against lefties last year, I was saying, hey, he's going to be the strong side of a platoon. He still hits righties well. He's going to be in there every single day in center field against righties. But I was fine, especially with the addition of Ramon Laureano this offseason, who has hit lefties really well in his career. I was like, if you want to sit Mullins against lefties and play Laureano and play Cowser in center, let's do it. And even when Cowser got injured and he is still out, I was unsure, but Mullins has shown us he's hitting lefties well too. We were like, hey, if you're going to play every day, just if you can be close to a league average hitter against lefties and then good against righties, you'll be fine. He's been incredible against lefties and said, yes, this is a small sample size, but the jump is insane. I'm fine with him. It's sticking in this leadoff spot full time, not just against righties, but also against lefties for now. He is the spark of this Orioles lineup. He's still stealing bases as well. He's their best on base guy. Just keep him in there until he slows down, because it has been fun to watch Cedric Mullins in this contract year so far here in March and April. Now, what went wrong on Tuesday night? Well, that was that Dean Kremer put up another bad start, and it got bad quickly. Bottom of the first inning, double to James Wood, 2-run homer to Nathaniel Lowe. It's immediately 2-0 Nats before Kremer even records an out. I was still on the Metro getting to Nats Park, and the Orioles were already down 2-0 in the bottom of the first inning. And it's, it looked like a bounce back start. His last time out there against the Guardians last week, went 5 1/3, gave up only 1 run. Wasn't his best work, but it was just so much better than what we had seen so far this season. It was like, all right, Dean had a couple of bad starts. He's starting to settle into the usual Dean. He's not facing, any kind of great offense in the Nationals. Let's see if he can double it up with another good start. And instead, it was another disaster on Tuesday night. 5 1/3 innings, 6 runs, 5 earned on 11 hits. Now, he didn't walk anybody, which is good, with 4 strikeouts, but 2 homers allowed on 101 pitches. His ERA is now 6.84 through 5 starts this season. And how bad Charlie Morton has been has kind of hid also how terrible Dean Kremer has been so far this season. It was that one good start against Cleveland, and that's been it. And, he gave up his second inning. Like, the defense didn't help him. Heston Kjerstad turned a out, or at least a bloop single, into a triple by completely misplaying a ball to lead off the second, and that run scored to make it 3-0. Then Kremer settled in, looked good in the second, third, and fourth innings, kept it a 3-0 game, and then the defense didn't help again, but he completely unraveled in the fifth, and that's when the Nats kind of fully pulled away against him in this game. And the splitter is just, it's not the pitch it was last year. That was his strikeout pitch. He used it a lot on Tuesday. He got 13 swings against it. Only 1 swing and miss on those 13 swings by Nats hitters against what is supposed to be Kremer's strikeout pitch. You are not going to be in a good spot. He still ended up with 4 Ks even without that splitter doing the damage. I mean, the center just looks, the cutter, I should say, looks like a cement mixer in the middle of the plate sometimes. And he just doesn't look crisp. And with that start, coming into play Wednesday, it raised the Orioles starting rotation ERA to 6.22 this season, by far the worst in baseball. Really, the only silver lining for Dean right now is that it's still April. And I'm not saying that because, it's early. It's because of how bad Dean Kremer has been in March and April throughout his career, including the start on Tuesday night. Kremer now has a 6.14 career ERA in the months of March and April. In every other month of his career, he has a career 3.98 ERA. A 3.98 career ERA, that is, you will take that every day of the week for a back of the rotation starter. So that's what he usually does. He has a bad beginning to the season, and then he settles in. I mean, even a bad first half, career first half ERA, 4.99. Career second half ERA, 3.75. Dean, every single year, gets better as the season goes on. And this happened really badly 2 years ago. I mentioned his ERA right now after Tuesday's start is now up at 6.84. Kremer had a 6.67 ERA in the entirety of the months of March and April in 2023. Like, Dean still got, another start this month to go. He finished that 2023 season with a total 4.12 ERA that included a 3.25 ERA after the All-Star break. He always gets better. So that really is the silver lining here. Like, yes, this is bad, but we've seen Kremer do this multiple times before in his career and just kind of pull out of it as the weather gets warmer. So hopefully, for the sake of the Orioles rotation, that is what Kremer does this season as well. And the shout out for this one, listen, especially when the Orioles are losing bad, the shout out doesn't always have to go to an Orioles player. The shout out goes to national starter Mitchell Parker, who was just incredible on Tuesday night. He gave the Nats 8 scoreless innings in this game, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, 99 pitches, now has a 1.39 ERA through 5 starts. He's been magnificent so far in his second big league season. Was pretty solid, made, 25, 30 starts for the Nats last year as a rookie. He's been incredible to begin this year. Obviously, the Orioles helped him out some. I kind of hate that Davey Martinez did not send him back out there for the 9th at just 99 pitches with a 7-0 lead, looking for the complete game shutout. That was kind of annoying. I wanted to at least see something cool when I was at the ballpark on Tuesday night. But all 5 of Parker's starts have been quality this year. Only in one of them has he allowed more than 1 earned run. This was the best and longest start of his career, and it wasn't super nasty, right? 4 strikeouts in 8 innings is not like, oh, it's crazy filth he's throwing up there. But what it is, it's one of those crazy rising fastballs that I talk about with the big induced vertical break on a 4-seam fastball. He throws, 92 to 95, which is solid velocity for a left-hander, which Parker is, but it's not the velocity that gets you. It's that IVB. I've talked about it, how 18 inches of induced vertical break is really elite ride on that fastball, almost gives it that rising action to a hitter. He averaged 19 inches and topped out at one 4-seam fastball, 23 inches of induced vertical break on Tuesday night. That is absurd, the rising action, and that leads to a lot of pop-ups because guys swing under the ball when a fastball has that kind of movement. He just used the fastball a lot. 53 of his 99 pitches were 4-seam fastballs, over half of his offerings, a 62% zone rate, so he had good command. He was throwing it up in the zone, and the Orioles just popped everything up. 7 pop-ups, 4 non-hard hit fly balls, and the 4 strikeouts. I mean, he was getting the Orioles. And listen, the O's did, Brandon Hyde, Michael Elias in the front office, they did what Orioles fans have been calling for. It was instead of play the matchups against the lefties and pile in the righties like Ramon Laureano or Jorge Mateo into the lineup, the Orioles played their regular lefties against the left-handed starter. Heston Kjerstad and Jackson Holliday were both in the starting lineup in this game, and it did not work. The Orioles got 1 hit against Parker in the entire game. Yeah, they drew a couple walks in this one, but they didn't do anything. And, with the pitchers, you can make the case the Orioles are they kind of set themselves up for failure this offseason by not addressing the issue enough. And we can have that conversation plenty of times. But with the hitters against lefties, the Orioles were overall really good. They were 5th in baseball as a lineup against left-handed pitchers last year, but most of that damage was done in the first half. They struggled in the second half. So Mike Elias addressed it this offseason, and I think he did a good job of it, right? They went and got Tyler O'Neill. Only Aaron Judge was a better hitter against lefties in Major League Baseball last year. Tyler O'Neill is now 2 for 21 against left-handers this season. They went and got Ramon Laureano and Gary Sanchez. They're not hitting righties. Adley, who's been amazing against lefties, he's not hitting lefties either. That's a part where you can say the front office actually did their job and did enough and went out and got guys who were supposed to fix that problem. What they did over their career would have fixed that problem. And so far early in the season, they're just not doing it. The Orioles are one of the worst offenses in baseball against lefties, even with the lefty mashers they have on the roster. And go in the other direction, leaving the left-handed hitters in there, well, that didn't work either on Tuesday night, and it was a pitiful, following up the 24-2 loss to get the off day and then lose 7-0 and look like that was not a good look either. And it felt like the Orioles were going to be left for dead, but they came back Wednesday, and they showed life. They showed a spark. They looked like a much better baseball team. Unfortunately, it still did not come with a win. I'll recap the Orioles' 4-3 loss from Wednesday coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And there's also endless entertainment on your Fire TV stick. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. And listen, I'm not the biggest gamer in the world, but I love watching movies. I love watching TV, and the Fire TV stick, it's got everything I could possibly want to watch from all those streaming services. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube third generation. So for the Orioles, it was a quite pitiful loss, well, both on Sunday and on Tuesday. This one coming to the Nationals, but they came back Wednesday, and I was a little scared it was going to happen again, but they looked like a different baseball team. They looked like a winning baseball team. They looked like a baseball team who actually had it pulled together. Unfortunately, it didn't actually lead to a win on the field, as they lost 4-3 on Wednesday night to the Nationals. And the record doesn't look fun. They now sit at 9-14 on the season. And they have lost 4 out of 5 games to slip further and further into this hole. But let's start with what went right on Wednesday night against the Nats. And that was Tomoyuki Sugano looked good again. And I will admit it, this game did not start off well. He gets behind 3-1 to the leadoff hitter, James Wood, in the bottom of the first of a 0-0 game. Wood, who likes everything out over the plate. Sugano tries to throw a front door sinker. Wood guessed it, was waiting on it, and just obliterated that pitch in right center field for a solo shot. And one batter in, it's 1-0. After 2 batters in, it was 2-0 on Tuesday. You're like, here we go again. And then Sugano settles down and gets a couple of outs, then a single, then a 2-run homer from Josh Bell. And it's 3-0 in the first. And you're just looking around and going, can it get any worse? Somehow it just did. I'm ready to throw in the towel at that point. I'm like, even it's happening to Sugano, who, gave the Orioles 7 innings of 2-run ball his last time out. He was like the only hope left in the rotation. Now he's given up 3 runs in the first. You're giving your offense these giant deficits before they can even get going. It's just been a disaster. Like this stat, Sugano giving up the 3 runs in the first made it 12 games in a row in which the Orioles starting pitcher had given up at least 1 run in the first 3 innings of the game. So basically had been unable to get through 3 scoreless innings to begin the game. And getting through 3 scoreless doesn't mean you're going to have a good start overall. Guys will do that and then get lit up in the 4th or 5th or 6th. Or some guys will give up some runs early and then settle down, which we'll talk about with Sugano. But with an offense that has been inconsistent and can struggle playing from behind, but has been really good playing from ahead, you feel like in general, if you can throw up 3 scoreless innings to begin the game, there's a good chance your offense is going to get you at least 1 run in those first 3 and be able to play from ahead. That seems to be a key. Is if you get through 3 scoreless, you're playing from ahead, you're in a good spot through the first third of the game. The Orioles hadn't done that in 12 consecutive games. The last time that the Orioles did that was April 7th in Arizona. Zach Eflin, who ended up going 6 innings in that game, through the first 3 scoreless against the D-backs. That was his last start before going on the injured list. Since Eflin went on the IL, 12 straight starts without anyone being able to go 3 scoreless to begin the game. And just getting in those deficits, it just makes it harder on everything, including the offense, to get going because you get that punch in the face from the beginning. But to Sugano's credit, and listen, his last start when he went 7 innings, 2 runs, he had 2 scoreless, then he gave up back-to-back solo home runs to lead off the 3rd against the Guardians, and then locked back in and got through 7. And you have to give him massive credit for what he did Wednesday night after that disastrous first inning. 6 consecutive scoreless frames after that, and Sugano was really good again. His final line, 7 innings of 3-run ball, 5 hits, 1 strikeout, no walks, and those 2 homers he allowed in the first inning on 94 pitches, now a 3.54 ERA through his first 5 major league starts. Yeah, it was only 1 strikeout. He's not dominating hitters, but it was also no walks, and that's the calling card of Sugano. He allowed 3 hits in the first inning. He only allowed 2 total for the rest of the game from the next 6 innings that he pitched. Only those 2 base runners, right? Because it was no walks and 2 hits over those 6 innings. He was phenomenal, and he was just using his best pitch a lot. 29 splitters. That is his best offering. That is what he threw the most. And yeah, that was a higher percentage of one pitch than Sugano generally throws, was 31% splitters, but all 5 other pitches, sweeper, cutter, sinker, four-seamer, curveball, he still threw between 10 and 17 times, all of them. So even though he was a little heavier on the splitter than he's been, because there were just a lot of lefties in that Nats lineup to face, and that's his best pitch against lefties, he still was using the kitchen sink approach with those other 5 pitches, throwing them all for strikes, keeping hitters off balance, getting outs early in counts, soft grounders, pop-ups, lazy fly balls, whatever it may need, whatever the course may be, he's going to throw strikes and seemingly get you outs. And that is back-to-back 7-inning starts. The only 2 Orioles to go 7 innings this year as a starter. Tomoyuki Sugano, 2 times in each of his last 2 starts. And it's not nasty stuff. It's tight margins. He's going to have games where it's not going to go well, but it's working. It's worked in back-to-back starts. And honestly, overall, especially compared to the rest of this Oriole rotation, 3.54 ERA in 5 starts, I'd say it's working really well. They can kind of rely on him. And this could have gotten out of hand again with the way it started. And you got to give kudos to Sugano. He just does not get rattled on that mound. He's 35. He's won 3 MVPs in Japan. He's been through it all. And even though this is a brand new league, now playing in the best league in the world, he is settling in nicely. And I mean, the Orioles are bad right now. They are 9-14, but you think about where they'd be without Sugano making these starts, and it's hard to think about something like that. And he stayed in the game. You go down 3-0 early, and he stays in the game long enough to let the Orioles come back and tie this game late, because he kept them around. Just another great job by Sugano. What went wrong in this game is the Orioles' ability to capitalize on what was a much better offensive performance. They were lifeless, shut out, 1 hit in the loss on Tuesday night. Looked like a completely different offense on Wednesday with basically the same lineup. I mean, O'Hearn was in there instead of Mountcastle, and then you had Arias in there instead of Gary Sanchez, but it wasn't a giant changeover from what they did. And they had 10 hits. They drew 3 walks, a hit batter, had a bunch of base runners, basically in almost every inning on Wednesday. Unfortunately, it was a different problem. Tuesday was completely lifeless. They did nothing. Wednesday, they got on base. They had some good ABs. They had traffic on the bases. They got Trevor Williams, the Nats starter, out of there after 5 innings. They got the Nats bullpen, which has been terrible this year. They got them into the game early. They capitalized there to score some runs. But unfortunately, the Orioles went 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position and left 12 men on base in this game. They just didn't come up with the huge swing, the huge hit to capitalize on all these opportunities. And while this is frustrating, it is much more pleasant to watch than the disaster that was Tuesday night, when they're always having good at-bats, they're always having base runners on, there's traffic, there's pressure put on the opposing pitchers. Generally, that's going to work out a lot more for you in the long run than whatever happened on Tuesday, and really whatever happened on Sunday as well against Cincinnati. And there was certainly life in this offense. They had 13 hard hit balls as a team, 2 each for Cedric Mullins, Gunnar Henderson, Ryan O'Hearn, and Jordan Westburg in this game. That included that big leadoff triple in the 8th for Westburg, who then scored on the Arias sac fly to tie the game. I mean, something still clearly bothering Westburg physically, as he's still DHing a lot, not playing the field every day. He's had his struggles at the plate, but that was a really big swing for him. He was fired up. And it wasn't all terrible with runners in scoring position. Like, the one hit was an Adley RBI single to get him on the board early in the game. And then, while they didn't get the hits, they did at least drive in the runs. Sac fly in the 7th, runners in scoring position, made it 3-2. Sac fly in the 8th with the runner at third, made it 3-3. So they at least put the ball in play to get the runs home, to come back and get a run in the 7th, run in the 8th against the Nats bullpen to tie this game, which you certainly like to see. They had chances to get that big hit. I mean, they had 2 on with 1 out in the 9th as well in a 1-run game, down 4-3 against Kyle Finnegan, and just could not get that big hit. But they kept fighting, which is good to see. And they gave themselves, with what Sugano did and with what the offense did, they gave themselves a chance to win. Unfortunately, they didn't get the big hit. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't love to bring it up, but you have to. I mean, CB Buckner, the home plate umpire, he completely inserted himself into this game. And he's generally been an embarrassment back there. He's generally been known as one of the 10 worst umpires in baseball for most of his career at this point. And here's the big issue with the umpires. The umpires as a whole are better than they have ever been. The training is better. The technology is better that they can train with. The younger umpires coming up are getting better and better every year. But there is still this group of umpires that are just so bad and so much worse than their colleagues. They bring the entire vibe of the profession down because they are so bad. And unfortunately, CB Buckner is one of them. And he was behind the plate on Wednesday night, and he made 2 horrendous and crucial calls in this game that both went against the Orioles. The first one in the 5th inning, Cedric Mullins gets a leadoff single. Orioles down 3-1, top of the 5th. Nobody out against Trevor Williams. They've got him on the ropes. 2-2 count to Gunnar Henderson. Breaking ball below the knees. Gunnar clearly checks his swing. Would have made it a 3-2 count with Mullins on first. He's running. You got to throw a strike to Gunnar. That's an at-bat that could change the game. Buckner from behind home plate calls it a strike 3 swing. On the replay, you clearly see, not even close. Gunnar clearly checked his swing. Why do we even have the third and first base umpires if home plate umpires are not going to check with them on check swing calls? I get that the check swing call is a little iffy and there's not an exact wording of what exactly a check swing versus a swing is, but you can't see it from back there. You just can't. The guys down the lines have a 5,000 times better angle. Every time I see a home plate umpire should not be allowed to make that call. I talked about last week, the dumbest rule in baseball is that you have to stay to the right side of the first baseline to be in the base path, even though the first base is on the left side of the line. The other dumbest rule is that home plate umpires can make a check swing call. You've got guys down the line, their sight line is right to where the check swing should be. That's what they're there for. They barely do anything else, especially at third. What does a third base umpire do most of the game except for make that call against left-handed hitters? That's pretty much all they do down there. Why are you as a home plate umpire making that call? Honestly, why are you allowed to make that call as a home plate umpire? You can't see it. So why are you changing a game with that call? It's ridiculous from CB. It's embarrassing. To him, to the profession, it is embarrassing. And then the call in the 8th. In the inning that changed the game. Gregory Soto comes out of the bullpen, 3-3 game, bottom 8. Great job by Sugano, 94 pitches. Orioles tie it. They go to one of the better bullpens in baseball this year. And yeah, Soto gives up a leadoff single, but he gets 1 and 2 to James Wood, a tough hitter. Throws a sinker that got a whole lot of the strike zone. If you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page, you're going to see it from the MLB.com game feed. You're going to see pitch number 4 right there, a 1-2 sinker. That's got a whole lot of the strike zone, except somehow, some way, called a ball by CB Buckner. Changes the at-bat. Wood fouls off a couple of pitches. Soto misses just outside on 3 and 2 and walks him. And instead of runner on first, 1 out, it's first and second. No outs. Orioles just missed turning a double play to the next hitter. Luis Garcia hits a sac fly. Nats up 4-3, bottom 8. If that's a strikeout, Soto gets the outs he needs, puts up a 0. It's 3-3 going top 9. It is a completely different game. I have no idea what Buckner was looking at, but 2 incredibly bad calls changed the game, went against the Orioles. A rule against the umpires making the check swing call from behind the plate would have fixed the first one. The challenge system with the ABS, which I'm very, very much for, would have fixed the second one. CB Buckner not having this umpiring job would also fix it. And the crazy part is, our other favorite umpire, John Bacon, he's on the same crew as CB Buckner. He was the third base umpire down there. So maybe he would have gotten the call wrong anyway. The fact that those two of the worst 10 umpires in the league are on the same crew, that is bad for the game. And unfortunately, it came into play on Wednesday. But the shout out for this loss, the shout out does go to Adley Rutschman. I said it on Monday's show. I thought the home run and single he had in Sunday's loss was the start of the turnaround for Rutschman, who was struggling stats-wise so far this year, and it might just be. He then walked again on Tuesday, then reached base 3 times on Wednesday. 2 singles, an RBI, and a walk. Almost had a third single. Nice leaping catch in the 9th inning, which looked like the Orioles were almost going to have first and second. Nobody out in that 9th. Man, that game would have changed had that line drive from Rutschman gotten into the outfield, but he's swinging the bat really well. Tommy Joseph, the assistant hitting coach, talked about it over the weekend. A lot of bad luck for Rutschman. He's slugging just 381, but his quality of contact has his expected slugging at 518. That's a huge difference even for this early in the season. The hits are coming. He's got 2 multi-hit games in his last 3 after having just 1 multi-hit game in his first 20, and that was on opening day in Toronto when like every Oriole had a multi-hit game. So he went 19 straight without doing it. Now 2 out of his last 3. He's swinging the bat well. It looks nothing close to the struggles we saw from Adley in the second half last year. So good to see him hopefully turning it back around and the results matching the process for him here coming up for the Orioles star catcher. But it was a loss. They got 2 on in the 9th, couldn't get it done. They lose 4-3, and they've dropped another series. Hopefully they don't get swept with the final game tonight. But I do have some pitching updates to get to, and I'll run through those quickly to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. There is nothing better than catching an MLB game live. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets even easier. With last minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On. And as another Orioles homestand comes up soon, I can count on Game Time to help grab tickets that meet my needs. And Game Time Picks, it makes finding the best deals effortless. It filters out the fluff and highlights the top discounts in the stadium. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That is LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So we finish off today's episode with some Orioles pitching updates. Let's begin with Cody Poteet, who was placed on the 15-day injured list on Tuesday with right shoulder inflammation. Poteet was called up on Sunday and made his Orioles debut in relief through 68 pitches in mop-up duty in the 24-2 loss. Hopefully just a small tweak for him, hopefully not a serious injury. Orioles got him in a small trade for cash from the Cubs earlier this season. Poteet, who was the only player traded back from the Yankees to the Cubs in the Cody Bellinger deal this offseason, was one of the last cuts from the Cubs roster in spring training. So the Orioles picked him up. He has options. He was kind of starter depth. He had started some games for the Yankees last year. Valiant effort in long relief in that disaster on Sunday, but he heads to the injured list. And the Orioles recalled Brandon Young to the Major League roster on Tuesday to take Cody Poteet's roster spot. Now, Young was called up to make his Major League debut as the starter on Saturday against the Reds, kept the O's in the game, in a game they won, allowed 3 earned runs in 4+ innings in his MLB debut. But the very next day was optioned back to AAA actually to get Cody Poteet on the roster because the Orioles used 7 of their 8 relievers on Saturday to win that game. And the O's just felt, hey, with Charlie Morton starting Sunday, it's been a little rough. We're probably going to need another fresh bullpen arm and a long reliever. And they very much did. So it was honestly good that they called up Poteet for him to be able to throw 68 pitches out of the bullpen on Sunday, even though the O's lost 24-2 either way. The bullpen would have been in an even worse spot had they not been able to do that. So for Young, normally, because of MLB rules, he would have had to wait 15 days until he can be recalled to the majors when you get sent down, to avoid teams just flipping pitchers up and down, up and down, up and down, toying with them and getting a bunch of fresh arms in their bullpen. But the rule states if you are replacing a player who is injured and going on the injured list, you can come back to the majors before that 15 days is up. And obviously, it had been only 2 days since he was sent down, but because of the injury, he replaces Poteet going on the IL, and Young is back. And Brandon Hyde said to the media before Wednesday's game that Young is back to be a starter, and he will be starting Friday night's game for the Orioles in Detroit against the Tigers. So he did enough to earn himself a second big league start. Now, with that, it leaves questions about the places for Charlie Morton and then Kyle Gibson coming up here in this Orioles rotation, because I figured once Brandon Young got sent down, that would have initially been his start on Friday, but he got sent down. I thought that would mean that Kyle Gibson would be getting called up to make that start Friday night that was vacated by Brandon Young going to the minors. Gibson threw 78 pitches on Sunday in his third kind of minor league build-up start after the Orioles signed him to a 1-year deal very late in spring training. Still needed to build up, so went to Sarasota, then went to the minor leagues to start some games. And at 78 pitches, that means he could throw probably close to 90 in his next start, so could be ready to start a big league game. And I thought it would be Gibson on Friday. That was before Young came back to the bigs. Brandon Hyde said on Wednesday they are still deciding whether Kyle Gibson needs one more ramp-up start in the minors or if he's just ready to come to the bigs right now. But everything Elias and Hyde and the Orioles have said, we haven't seen a full report, but it basically sounds like Gibson has a May 1st opt-out in his contract, which means if he's not on the big league team by May 1st, he can just choose to become a free agent. So if the Orioles feel he needs one more minor league start, he could make that on Friday in the minors, and then he would be ready again to start on Wednesday in the majors, which would be April 30th, a day before May 1st. The Orioles would still be able to call him up and start in time before that opt-out comes. So it is still possible he makes one minor league build-up start. The issue is the Orioles rotation is in such dire straits right now that they are in such a bad place that they kind of need 37-year-old Kyle Gibson as soon as possible. So it'll be interesting to see what that decision is and how Gibson feels. But depending on Gibson is also going to depend on what the Orioles do with Charlie Morton. It's an ERA over 10 over 5 starts. He was horrendous in his last start on Sunday against the Reds. Many, including myself, are calling for him to be out of the rotation if the Orioles have another option. But it kind of feels like they don't have other great options to replace him at this point. So if Gibson is not ready yet and needs one more minor league start, that guarantees Morton gets at least one more start. That guarantees that Charlie Morton would start Saturday in game 2 of that series in Detroit against the Tigers. Then after that, who knows? But it means Morton would get at least one more chance because the Orioles just don't really have anyone else right now with all the guys that are injured. So if they did deem that Gibson was ready to make his major league debut this season, that could mean that Young would start Friday. Then on Saturday, you would send Young back to AAA. That would open the spot to activate Gibson, and Gibson would start on Saturday, and then you would just roll it right back over to Dean Kremer starting Sunday, skipping Morton, and that would move Charlie Morton, at least for the time being, to the bullpen to be your long reliever mop-up man as he tries to kind of figure things out here, and that is certainly a possibility. Now, Zach Eflin is also a big part of this equation. He, according to Hyde, is going to throw a side session on either Friday or Saturday this week as he continues to build up his arm coming off that lat injury that put him on the IL back on April 8th. He's building up for a return sometime in May, and he is really the guy who would maybe kick Morton off the team altogether when he returns. We know Eflin at this point is the best starter on this Orioles team. They miss him dearly. But Brandon Young and or Kyle Gibson could also just kick Morton off if either of them pitch well enough in these next couple of upcoming starts that they are presumably going to get. But they just badly need Eflin back. So if he can come back at some point in early May, that probably spells the end for Charlie Morton if either Gibson or Young can at least hold their own to get the other open rotation spot. And Trevor Rogers, who's coming back from the knee injury, we know he wasn't great last year, but he's at least a major league starter. He made his first rehab start in Double-A Chesapeake on Wednesday, so that's good news through just shy of 40 pitches, so he's building himself up. And we got the official word on Grayson Rodriguez, who was set to throw another bullpen last week, felt some shoulder pain. They canceled the bullpen. He went for an MRI. He clearly didn't like the news, so he went for a second opinion. You never go for a second opinion if you like the news. Well, it turns out Grayson has another mild lat strain. The lat strain is the injury that he suffered in 2022 in AAA in June, kept him out for the rest of the season. The lat strain is the injury he suffered August of last year, kept him out for the remainder of the 2024 season. Then he had some tricep and elbow issues in spring. The shoulder issue is completely separate from those injuries, but Brandon Hyde talked about it on Wednesday, didn't seem super concerned, said that it's a very mild strain, says he expects Grayson to start throwing again in a couple of weeks. So that is actually good news, but even with that, I mean, we're probably looking at Grayson being out for probably most of, if not all of the first half of the season. Like I would target a return around the All-Star break, like maybe early July if we're lucky, but if he's going to be shut down for another 3 weeks to a month and then building back up, I mean, that's taking all of June basically for his buildup. So hopefully in July you have Grayson back, but you're almost putting Grayson close to the bucket of Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells right now, where you do expect them to pitch for you at some point this year, but you're just like, yeah, we're not having any of them in the first half, and whatever we get out of them in the second half is a bonus. I'm kind of just adding Grayson to that list right now. It's unfortunate because the Orioles need him, but that is where their pitching is at injury-wise at the moment, and we keep you updated as we get more updates about Gibson versus Morton for the rotation this weekend. But that'll do it for today's episode. Orioles and Nationals, final game of the series tonight. I would really not like the Orioles to get swept by the Nats in DC, and it'll be up to Cade Povich to try and figure out how to not do that. He was a disaster in his last start. He's got a 6.38 ERA. Let's hope he is not a disaster, as this game is on Masson 2 at 6:45 tonight. He will unfortunately go up against Mackenzie Gore, who has been really, really good this year, and he struck out 13 batters in 6 innings of 2-run ball his last time out at Coors Field in Colorado. Gore's been great. He's also a lefty. That spells trouble for the Orioles, but maybe this is when they turn it around. And then I'll be back tomorrow for a Friday episode recapping the final game between the Orioles and the Nats, getting you ready for a weekend series in Detroit against the Tigers, and then any other Orioles news and notes that you may need. But that's coming up tomorrow's episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.